So, ladies and gentlemen, we are extremely pleased to introduce you to a woman that we met recently. I've been following Jasmine Crockett's tweets for about a year, and she impressed me from the start. And we had her in a program about a month ago, Truth and Democracy Rally. She was our keynote speaker, and we just were overwhelmed by her authenticity, her passion, and her grasp of the issues. So we're really, it's a great opportunity to introduce you to her, have you meet Jasmine, and get to know a little bit about her. We think she's going to be a dynamite Congresswoman from Dallas. So Michael, I pass it to you to say something about Jasmine.
Thanks, Casey. I'm Michael Sales. Welcome to everyone. So good to have you with us. I want to say a couple of words about why I'm so stirred up to have Jasmine speaking with us tonight. I'm a passionate and feeling-oriented person. I've been involved with politics ever since I was 12 years old. That was a while ago. I back politicians whose policies and personas turn me on and make deep sense to me. And people like Barack Obama, Beto O'Rourke, John Lewis, Tim Ryan, Val Demings, and Jerry Brown, the list could go on. There aren't really that many politicians who light my fuse, who get me worked up. But when I met Jasmine virtually a couple of weeks ago at Collier Freedom's Truth and Democracy rally, I knew that she was one of those people that I've been looking for and that I think America's looking for. The Democratic Party has a charisma gap that has cost us deeply and dearly. It has ceded much of the passion politics turf to nuts but like Matt Gaetz and Ron DeSantis and the other guy. Well, fired up and ready to go activists like Jasmine Crockett can not only close that gap, they can put us out front. So it is with great pleasure that I'm joining with Jasmine tonight in this conversation I've been very much looking forward to.
So we're going to show a little video, an ad that Jasmine recently made, and Jacob is going to cue that video.
Jasmine Crockett.
My Congresswoman.
Are you ready?
I think so.
I know so. See, there's a spirit that burns in some people, a flame for justice.
Give us the right to vote.
We want to live as decent human beings in America.
We are a people in search of our future.
They're trying to make sure that young people and minorities do not vote. And it's just as simple as that.
Your vote is precious, almost sacred.
And you, Jasmine, you have that same fire. You never stop fighting for what's right.
Attorney Jasmine Crockett has rallied 20 defense attorneys to help anyone detained and charged at large.
So we would get a hashtag, and then we would march. We get a hashtag, and then we would march. Something has to change.
State Representative Jasmine Crockett, a Democrat from Dallas, filed Breonna's Law.
Texas aims to limit no-knock raids.
We can't allow ourselves to get discouraged. We need that same spirit in Texas and in Washington.
Republicans in Texas have rolled out a spate of new election bills taking particular aim at early voting.
Democrats have left the state.
The Senate failed to pass key voting rights legislation. 2 Senate Democrats sided with Republicans.
I will be here fighting for what I said I came to get, which was to get voting rights for those in not only the state of Texas, but in this country. I think that we've actually lit a fire when it comes to a lot of our electeds. I think that we actually ignited something within them as well.
You are ready, Jasmine. And it is time for your generation to carry the torch and light the way.
I took the fight from Texas to Washington, and I'll do it again in Congress. We'll give people access to better health care, jobs, and education. And if our leaders won't protect our vote, we'll vote for different leaders. Thank you, Congresswoman, for passing along this spirit.
Jasmine, you've always had it.
Thank you, Jacob. So we're going to get straight into the issues. And before we do that, we would like to welcome and unveil Representative Jasmine Crockett, who's our future Congresswoman from the 30th in Dallas. So Jasmine, please say hello.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you. I apologize that I'm in my car, but we have an ice storm because, you know, there's a such thing as climate change. And so I am actually trying my best to get to the store before everything shuts down. So I apologize that I'm in my car as I'm trying to see if my windshields will defrost. But I'm really excited to be here. I am Texas State Representative Jasmine Crockett. I currently represent House District 100, which is located in the great city of Dallas and the not so great state of Texas sometimes. And I am in my freshman term. I am now running for Congressional District 30, a seat that has been occupied by Eddie Bernice Johnson for the last 30 years. She chaired the Senate Redistricting Committee about 30 years ago when that seat was actually created, and she ran for it, and she has served District 30 well. She is a tender 86 years old, and she thought it was time for her to retire, and she called me and asked me if I would consider running. And so that's what I'm doing. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that we did spend a lot of time in DC over the summer, raising issues that Texas, sadly enough, brought to the forefront, issues that shouldn't have been issues for any of us, things surrounding such things as our basic democracy and access to the ballot box, which we are seeing play out exactly the way that the Republicans wanted it to play out, which was to suppress the vote and disenfranchise our elderly and our disabled folk and our Black and brown folk. That's what they wanted to happen. That's exactly what's happening. And this was never about voter fraud. In addition to that, Texas decided it wanted to be on the center stage when it came to reproductive rights. And sadly enough, I was having to fight against that. We've also not been in the news as much as relates to the attack on trans children, but our governor just decided to step it up a notch and has directed our protective services. I don't know what y'all may call it. We call it CPS, but Child Protective Services Organization, to basically go after and investigate any parents that are participating in gender affirming treatments with their children for child abuse. So we've got so many fun things going on in Texas, and sadly enough, it looks like Florida and Arkansas and Missouri and Georgia really want to join the bandwagon of Texas nonsense. So I have an opportunity to go to the federal level, not only to fight for Texans, but honestly to fight for all of us in this country. We really have to get back to some semblance of normalcy and reasonableness. And I'm hoping that that's what I can bring on the federal level.
That's amazing, Jasmine. And we have so many issues that are kind of replicated across our two states. You know, we're sort of both suffering from assaults on voting rights, on LGBTQ rights, on climate change, on you know, so many issues. So we're kind of working in the same trenches, and we really appreciate what you're doing. Michael is going to introduce the first issue that we kind of wrap our arms around, and that's voting rights. So we'll pass it to Michael.
Hey, thanks, Casey. So Jasmine, so we have this thing that's been passed in Florida. They call it a voting rights bill or a voter, counter voter fraud bill. I call it the Florida voter suppression bill, and I'm not alone in saying that. And here are some of the things that this bill does, and I think you're going to recognize them. It limits the use of drop boxes where voters can deposit their absentee ballots. It adds more identification requirements for anyone requesting an absentee ballot. It limits who can collect who can collect drop-off boxes. It prohibits outside groups from holding signs or wearing political paraphernalia within 100 feet of a polling place or a drop box. And by the way, I should say that one of the people on your screen here is Phyllis Andrews, who was a close colleague and a friend of mine and ours. And Phyllis has herself and with her team has registered hundreds of people here in Collier County, which is a deep red county. So the thing I'd be interested in is I enumerated these things, and I want to know if you can, when you look at this legal language, it doesn't really translate so much into human terms. And what do you think of what it means to limit the use of drop boxes, to add identification requirements, to specify who can collect drop-off boxes, and to prohibit groups from being, used to be within 100 feet of a polling place or a drop box, and now it's out to 150 feet. It's like, put that into the human consequence.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, none of this, I shouldn't say none of this is new, but a lot of this isn't new. Sorry, people are calling me. A lot of this isn't new. So with the drop boxes, what that is a matter of making sure that they can make it more difficult for the everyday person to access voting, right? When we looked in Texas, that was one of the things that they were pushing for. Harris County is the 4th largest county in the entire country. And they were saying 1 drop box for Harris County. I mean, that's not even reasonable. It's not even pretending to be reasonable, right? And so when you're doing this, what you're doing is making people say, oh, it's going to be a long line, or oh, it's too far for me to drive, especially since I may have to go do this when I'm supposed to be heading to work, or when I'm supposed to be heading to pick up my kids, or when I'm supposed to be taking care of my parents. Like, voting should be accessible, and accessibility means easy. It's not supposed to be hard. The only thing that is supposed to be hard, which I will agree with, is cheating, right? But there's nothing that makes you more inclined or less inclined to cheat because of the distance that's driven. That's just insane. So that's one of the first things that stands out. You also talked about the identification mechanisms. This is one that we're suffering from right now. Dallas County had almost 30% of its vote by mail applications rejected. Now, one of the craziest stories that I read today, well, there were a couple of things that were really bad about this. Number one, when you had to put your identifying information on there, it was a matter of what they had in their system, not a matter of what exists in real life, but what they have in their system, right? So if I registered to vote 50 years ago, and I've been voting for the last 50 years, and maybe the law 50 years ago just said I just sign up to vote. I don't have to present, any identifying information. So maybe they don't have anything in the system because when I registered, I didn't have to. And it's not like they update their records and say, oh, well, when this person came, they presented a driver's license and it had this number. So what we've seen happen is there literally is a 79-year-old, I believe, woman who registered to vote so long ago that her ID and her social, for whatever reason, I'm guessing back then you didn't necessarily have to put your social down, they're not popping up in the system. So they rejected her vote by mail application. And the bad part is the language that they used on the application gave you the option of using either the last 4 of your social or using your ID number. That's how the language reads. But the law says you've got to do the correct one that you used when you registered. And so we've been having to tell people, just put both of them down. She did that and still got rejected because potentially when she registered to vote, the law didn't even require that much information, but she's been voting for years. And so now someone has to go get her just to get her to the poll so that she can actually vote. That is absolutely ridiculous. Luckily for her, somebody can do that, but that's not going to be the case for everyone that's being rejected. And we saw 40% of the vote by mail applications being rejected in Harris County. And we saw our very own lieutenant governor, the one that was pushing this bill. He is the one, this is where we got this bill from. This is a Senate bill.
This was his baby. Well, he ended up, I believe, violating the own law that he was pushing when he decided to have his campaign send out vote by mail applications. And it's supposed to be a felony now if we as elected officials encourage anyone to do vote by mail, but I don't know, the law probably doesn't apply to him. And so he sent these out, and then they said, if you live in a blue county, return it. Well, everyone that was in like a Dallas County, a Harris County, any county that was blue, they actually had a return envelope for those vote by mail applications that went to the Secretary of State. And a number of those people are going to be disenfranchised because our Secretary of State doesn't take those. It has to go to your local elections administrator. So they're even messing up. And honestly, I think there's going to be more Republicans that are going to be disenfranchised than Democrats. And that's why I kept saying this is about democracy. It's not about one party. It's about making sure whoever wants access to the ballot box has the ease of access. And we're seeing people being disenfranchised over and over, specifically because of that one provision.
Thank you so much.
You know, some of you may not know that Jasmine was instrumental in leading that walkout of the Democratic caucus for something like 5 weeks. Jasmine, you guys all moved to DC and made that point, you know, and brought that attention, brought that issue to the fore, and really held the caucus together for a long time. It was fairly heroic. It was a huge upheaval and a huge sacrifice for the families. They had to leave their kids behind, and they were being threatened with lawsuits. So you should all know that that Jasmine was one of the leaders of that caucus and was really, really instrumental in holding the caucus together for a long time. It was really quite an amazing feat. And Jasmine is a lawyer, a defense lawyer, and she helped get people out of jail who were arrested in Black Lives Matter movement. So she's really done a lot of remarkable work in Texas, and we think she should have a national platform and be in our Congress. That's what we're trying to do. And you may see it's sort of like working in the mirror. I have to point the opposite direction, like a weatherman. But there's a link here that I want you all to see, because we've raised $2,000. We're trying to double that tonight. So if you're so inclined to help Jasmine with her campaign, as we are, as passionate as we are, please donate here. And it's also in the chat link on the Facebook live stream. So Beverly will put that in the chat. So thank you, Jasmine. The second issue we wanted to talk about, which we share with Texas, is repressive LGBTQ laws. Now, we have Florida school districts may not encourage classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in primary grade levels in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students. The bill doesn't specify what age appropriate is, and it doesn't say what developmentally appropriate is. So it's very vague, and it's terrorizing these kids, and it's completely unjust. The bills would give parents the ability to sue schools if they believe the school violated any provisions of this law. So, you know, we're very close to the LGBTQ community here, and we helped found Naples Pride. So we take this very much to heart. And Jasmine, I wanted to see if there was anything going on in a similar vein there for you in Texas and what you feel about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So our attack has really been on our trans children, and then they started attacking the books in our schools and disallowing any books that talked about sexuality other than heterosexuality. So they've got like a book ban list right now that they're really trying to push. The vague language is intentional. That's just so that it can be intimidating and leave it up to whatever court one of those cases lands in to interpret whatever way they want to, which is really unfortunate. And so it feels a lot like our attack on repro rights, where, you know, you just got these vigilantes that are going to go after our schools and cripple our teachers from having the autonomy that they really should have in their classrooms. They've been hired, they have been properly trained, they have been certified. And if a teacher is doing something that is counterproductive to educating a child, then obviously they can always be fired. But this idea that we're going to start to just kind of be this overly litigious society when it comes to these cultural issues is absolutely unacceptable. And it's really sad because we continue to say that we're this great democracy, number one, and that we are this melting pot. We are all about diversity, right? But we're about diversity until, far right wingers decide that that's too much, right? A little too much melanin. You're not subscribing to what I consider to be the evangelical description of who we are as people. And then we start saying, never mind, you lose your rights. And that's not who we're supposed to be in this country. We're supposed to have freedom of religion. We're supposed to be the people that believe in freedom. And the very same people that are saying that they don't have freedom because they can't decide whether or not to wear a mask or whether or not to take a vaccine are the very same people that are encouraging individuals to go after the freedoms that we have all enjoyed for years. Our country is truly becoming a regressive country. To think that we're the same country that had a Black president who pushed forward with marriage equality years ago, to now have a country that says, no, don't talk about it, remove and burn all the books. It's just mind-boggling to me at this point. And we've got to have people that have courage. And let me tell you, I was talking to someone earlier today and I said, one thing that I learned in the Texas House is that there's a lot of political theater. There are people that were voting for bills that they absolutely disagreed with, but they were afraid of the far right rhetoric and backlash. They were afraid that Donald Trump was going to come after them. They were afraid that our governor was going to come after them with his $80 million war chest. And so instead of doing what they really felt like was right and leaving certain people to really just live their lives, they did what was wrong because they were cowards. And sadly enough, I see something similar happening on the federal level. We see what's happened with Congresswoman Cheney as she's tried to speak up for what was right. She got attacked by those in her own party. And until we get back to having like normal disagreements, I think that this is going to continue to break down in a very negative way. And it is sad that any adult that has been elected to represent any group of people would ever pick on children. I think it has to be the biggest shame that we can have. And honestly, I don't know if there is any worse bully, right? Like elected officials that are bullying children. I think that that's a problem. And I think that we may have to get to the point that we do something on the federal level as it relates to children in our educational system as they've gone through this attack, as well as they've dealt with things like CRT that is spreading throughout our country like a terrible cancer. They don't even know how to spell CRT, let alone do they know what it means. But that's what we're dealing with right now. And it's really sad.
Yeah. Michael, do you want to get into the next issue?
Well, I wanted to ask,
sorry.
I wanted to point something out, and I wanted to ask a question that might take a couple of minutes to respond before getting into this crazy abortion ban thing that's been proposed here. So I wanted to say, first of all, that that what you're hearing when Jasmine said a moment ago, people who don't stand up for what they actually believe are cowards. All right. So this is an example of somebody who's not a coward. All right. This is a kind of example of the type of leadership that when she was one of the leaders of this Texas walkout last year, this is why so much media attention was paid to Jasmine Crockett, and why Congresswoman Johnson, one of the reasons why Congresswoman Johnson said, let's take this freshman representative and put her into the Congress of the United States. So I would just want to point out, I got to do it too. So this is a fundraiser. This is the donation link. Please look into that. Jasmine, so let me throw this question to you. what do you think is the vision for America that the right wing has, that these radical rights have? What do they want to have for our country, and how do you feel about that?
One of the things that I think that they want, and sadly enough, they're getting, is they want to instill fear. They want people to be nervous. They want them to be scared. They want people to go back into hiding, right? They don't want every American to feel comfortable in their skin. Instead, they want them to feel uncomfortable. They want them to be afraid to say what they really believe, for fear of backlash, for fear of arrest, for a fear of, like I mentioned before, that we're dealing with our governor wanting parents to actually be under CPS investigation, which puts them into a position where they may lose their children. They absolutely want to, quote unquote, take their country back. They don't believe in democracy so long as they are not winning. And right now we are the most beautiful that we probably have ever been right now as a people overall. We have people that aren't afraid to live their truths, whatever those truths may be. We have Black people that are gonna say that they're Black and they're proud, and that's not seen as a bad thing. We have our brown brothers and sisters that are absolutely embracing the fact that, maybe they got here when they were little and maybe they didn't ask to be here, but they are just as American as the rest of us because this is the only home that they've ever known. And they are participating and fighting back and fighting alongside all of us for just equity. Like, it's crazy to me that we live in a country where, for whatever reason, we feel like it makes sense to treat anyone lesser than. It just doesn't make sense to me. And maybe it's because I don't have that privilege, that's not how I see the world. I really want everyone to be able to enjoy what we consider to be the American dream. And there are those that believe that they really like the society where we have second-class citizens. And they feel as if say, for instance, the 4th Black woman from the state of Texas is elected to Congress, that somehow that is infringing upon their freedoms and their rights to exist. And it doesn't. The reality is that we can all coexist. We all should be pushing to coexist. But instead, there are those that want to continue to divide us. And the reality is that there is more that unites us than divides us on any given day. And I just wish that we would stop with all of the hateful rhetoric, and we would actually start to see the beauty that exists in all of us and start fighting for the common sense things that we all want. We all want a strong economy. We all want to feel as if we can go to the doctor regardless of our employment status. Like, these are the basic things that, like in Texas, we all want to make sure that our lights stay on. We all want to make sure, or we should all want to make sure, that there is a planet that still exists far beyond our years, right? Like, these should be like very simple common sense things. I don't think that they should be progressive ideas. I think these should just be part of like the common sense category. But sadly enough, it's either progression or regression in this country right now. And if we don't start to get people that just kind of make it very simple for all of us, I'll give you an example. I had a Republican that emailed me and said, I'm a Republican, but I've been watching your ads for Congress. And I actually agree with everything that you're saying on your ads. And I think that I want to open this dialogue. We're really not asking for anything crazy. Like, I mean, is it so crazy to just let people live? I mean, like, really, is it crazy for people to say that I want clean air? I mean, it really shouldn't be crazy. The things that we're asking for, they're just very basic things. And I think if we just start to open the dialogue, and if we can get people to stop being so fearful, I really thought that once we got rid of Trump, that we were going to be in a very good and healthy situation. Clearly we're not, right? That was my hope and prayer. I don't know when we'll get to that point. I don't know if it's going to take endorsed Trump candidates to be beat before we can get there. But I do think that we can get there. But I think we as people have to start uniting around just very basic common sense principles and not making it so much me versus you or us versus them, but just kind of like, this is all of us together. That's exactly why my campaign is Jasmine for Us, because I really am fighting for all of us.
You know, something that you said struck me. I mean, we have a multiracial and a multicultural society, but we don't have a multiracial and a multicultural democracy. It's just not representative. And I think that you will do wonders to helping represent every aspect of our society and our culture, and bring some sanity to Washington. We hope. So I wanted to pivot to this other issue, which is very much in the news today, and that's Ukraine. And I'm just boggled how the radical Republicans are bending themselves into pretzels to defend autocrats instead of our democratic allies and partners. I just don't understand. I mean, it's so bizarre, and it goes so much against the grain of the traditional Republican, strong security and anti-Russian. So I wondered if you had any thoughts about that, and why we're even having this discussion with that crazy right wing and the twice impeached the other guy. So wanted to hear your thoughts about that, Jasmine.
I mean, this goes back to kind of how we've lost all semblances of normalcy, especially in DC. And I think it also goes back to this courage factor, right? We saw, it was interesting. When Trump was elected, people were saying that they were afraid of this or that. And I was most afraid of our status in this world and the security. I was most afraid of our international security, because it didn't just seem like he understood what an ally was, who ours were. It seemed like he was consistently working against the interests of Americans, which is interesting because, of course, his theme is "Make America Great Again" and put America first. And it didn't seem like he was ever doing that. It seemed like Trump was always putting Trump first. And I don't know what all he had going on, what all he has going on, but I absolutely believe, considering like who he decided he wanted to be friendly with, that there was something more to the story that the average American is just unaware of. And I feel as if he is still pulling strings. I know for a fact, just like on the Texas House floor, I don't remember what bill it was, but the governor started calling people on the House floor, telling them how to vote. Definitely did not feel like a separation of power whatsoever. And I believe that Trump is still making these phone calls. I absolutely know that he's still making these phone calls, and he's waging these threats behind closed doors. I mean, we finally got him off of Twitter, which was helpful, since it was definitely his mode of communication when it came to the insurrection. So, we're a little bit safer, but we are not safe until Trump decides that he wants to go over and stay in Russia or somewhere permanently. That's when we'll maybe be safe, because they may give him some position in their government. Who knows? It's really sad. And I mean, I really thought, he's not really the most intelligent guy, but he is a master manipulator. And so lacking intelligence is one thing, but man, he is the king manipulator. And right now he is manipulating those that are supposed to be Republicans, but they have decided that they have converted to the Trumplican party. And so once he releases his hold, I think we'll be kind of okay. What's sad is that I see the attempt to be the next Trump out of your governor and out of my governor. I see that that's what they're trying to do. I don't think that they naturally are inclined that way. So hopefully we can minimize how much they do, because I don't think it's as much of a natural inclination. He's just like crazy and wild. And I think that what we're seeing is anything that seemingly goes against common sense, I personally believe is his influence on various members of the Republican Party. It's just like those members that absolutely denounced January 6th. And then all of a sudden, no, it was a misunderstanding. They were just on a tour, right? Like, how? Like that's where we are.
So, Jasmine, how much money do you have to raise for this election? What's your goal?
Yeah, so it feels like way too much money at all. So we have election day on March 1st. So we are almost there, thank goodness. But right now we're in need of another $36,000. And it feels like that would be the light at the end of the tunnel.
$36,000. So,
yep.
Folks, we have to step up. We have to see if we can help Jasmine out. By the way, Jasmine, you've done some excellent multitasking. You're driving and having a conversation with us. I thought you were parked, but it looks like you're actually driving. So be careful.
Be careful.
So we're going to see if there are any questions from the people in the Zoom. We've got 4 or 5 people. You can just unmute yourself if you want to ask a question of Jasmine, Phyllis or David or Pat or any of the other people in the Zoom room. And then if you have questions from the Facebook chat, Beverly will relay those to us by text message and we'll get them to Jasmine. So anybody have a question? Phyllis? No? David? Oh, David's going to have a little trouble unmuting. Pat, would you have a question for Jasmine?
What does Jasmine see as Trump's end role? How do we get rid of him?
Say that again.
What does Jasmine see as the way we get rid of Trump? An indictment or what?
How do we get rid of him?
You know what? I don't even know if an indictment will do it because he will claim that he's a martyr. That's what I think will happen if he's indicted. I mean, literally, it is cult-like mentality. And so I think we need somebody who knows how we get rid of cults because that's what it is. I mean, the fact that you could have someone that was running to become the president of the United States who says, I could kill somebody in open daylight and I would still get elected, that tells you that is cult-like mentality. When is that ever okay? Right? But he knows that that's what it is. They will follow him to the ends of the earth. We saw an attempt. I mean, we had officers die, not an attempt. We saw murder take place. We saw an attempt to, literally overthrow our government. And members that were there and were nervous. And, there's even one of my colleagues, he ended up running, was it at that time? I'm trying to think. I think so. So one of my classmates, Jake LZ, ended up running for Congressional District 6. And he did run. He ran, and I believe that the person who he replaced, Ron Wright, passed away from COVID. And I'm trying to remember if he actually got sick with COVID after having to deal with January 6th. Like, members had to kind of get wherever. It wasn't about socially distancing. It was about staying alive. And he literally lost his life. I mean, I don't know what more it takes. I mean, our vice president, they were saying, hang Pence. This is Trump's vice president. And literally, like, he sat silent and tried to act like it was nothing. Obviously, recently, he's changed his tune a little bit. But the cult-like mentality, I think, is going to be a cancer for us until his last breath, honestly.
I think Darwin is hard at work, and they may be engineering their own demise by dying of COVID or or refusing climate change, they'll suffer from forest fires and what. So hopefully that'll offset the voter repression. They will just die of attrition from being stupid enough to be not taking vaccines, et cetera, hopefully. Jasmine, a question from the Facebook chat, and that is, what is the first thing you will do when you are elected to Congress?
Yeah, so considering the fact that the election is, I'm losing count of my days now, I think 6 days away. The first business that I have is actually to deal with the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was signed into law. I continue to tell everyone that they're going to get a Congresswoman and a half. They'll get the sitting Congresswoman who will go off and still be fighting the good fight, hopefully trying to pass the Build Back Better plan. But I need to talk to the small businesses that are here. I need to figure out what it's going to take to make sure that they access those funds and we don't have more of the haves versus the have-nots, where some get richer and others still can't play and participate in the process. So I will be doing a listening tour with my small businesses to find out what issues, if any, they're facing with being able to access the infrastructure dollars, because I really want to make sure that we're promoting our economy right now, like our local economy. Because what we see is anytime there's a good economy, crime is down. And so if we can go ahead and make sure that those dollars are actually circulating in our local economy, then I think that will do so much, not just for the people of my district from a financial standpoint, but also for the other things that we don't really have as much control over on the federal level. But even things like crime, a good side effect of that will be a decrease in crime. So that's my first plan of business. Now, once I'm sworn in, I don't know kind of where we would be. That wouldn't be until January of 23. And so I don't know if we're looking at Build Back Better being in place at that point in time. I would hope that we wouldn't continue to be fighting for our democracy at that time. But if we are, then I want to dig in. I want to make sure that some of those bills that I would consider to be shotgun bills, that means kind of like just one singular issue versus the omnibus bill that kind of has everything in it. I'm trying to see if I can find some common ground on some very basic things that would help out crazy states like the state of Texas. So online voter registration would go a huge way, or go a long way in the state of Texas. What we saw recently is that our Secretary of State said he didn't have enough paper to send out voter registration cards. He didn't have enough. And they won't let us do online voter registration. So that's what suppression looks like in the state of Texas, because we actually have the mechanism for online voter registration because we were sued, and under federal law, we were violating it when we weren't allowing people an opportunity to register to vote online when they renewed their license online. And so we got sued. That infrastructure is in place. And what we saw was 1 million new people registered to vote in 11 months, just when they were renewing their licenses. And we only renew our licenses once every 6 years in the state of Texas. So imagine what could happen and what would happen if we just had online voter registration. And the majority of states actually do online voter registration, Republican and Democratic states. So I'm hoping that I can find some common ground, maybe get at least some of these shotgun bills done that would really go a long way in helping a state like Texas.
So you said the Secretary of State didn't have enough paper. I think there was I understand that in the last days of the Trump presidency, there was a lack of paper too, because somebody was chewing it up or flushing it down the toilet. So they had a dearth of paper there at the last days. That's great. So Michael,
well, just wait,
has a question.
David
has a question. Go ahead, David.
Jasmine, what are the polls currently telling you?
So I haven't paid for another poll, just a point of information. Polls cost us about $15,000 a pop. So we had a poll that we conducted like mid-January, and that poll had me at 35 points. The next closest person was at 11 points. After that, that next person was at 3 points, even though the media constantly says she's the best one for a runoff. I don't know where they're not looking at polling. But she was at 3 points, and then everyone else was at 1 point.
I'm sorry, this is a primary that you're contesting in?
It's a primary. I've got 8 opponents in a primary. And so 51% of the electorate was kind of aware of what was going on. And 35 of the 51% of people that knew what was going on, they went for me. 49% had no idea. So we knew that we had a huge information gap and we really needed to scale the operation up and scale it up quickly. And so what we saw is that once people, if they heard about all of us, right? So we all were able to get our information out to people. They still preferred my resume over the resumes of my opponents. And so we've scaled our operation up. We're really the only ones that have scaled to the level that we have. And so I truly believe that we can get over the 50%. My biggest competition is the field itself, the fact that there are 8 people that are running. But in a district that's almost 1 million people, it's really tough to communicate, right? Like it takes a lot of money to be able to send them mail, to be able to get on TV, get on radio, get on digital, and even do some field work. But even field work, you're kind of limited in being able to get to enough people.
The registration in Harris County is predominantly Democratic, I assume?
So we don't register that way. We have open primaries. So you can just vote whichever way you want to vote. So we're not like registered as a Democrat or a Republican. But Harris County is the last of the large blue counties to actually go blue. So Dallas County is deep blue. My district specifically is about 80% Democratic. So there are 6 Republicans that are running now. Whoever wins really doesn't stand a chance in November. So the real fight right now is right now in our primary.
And you need 50 at one point more than 50.
Yeah, I don't even need a full point. Anything over 50. I take a fraction of a point. And I am not greedy. That is all I'm asking for is anything over 50, which still leaves 49.99 something percent for the other 8 opponents.
So we're trying to help Jasmine get over the crux of the primary, which is in about a week. So we're trying to help her plow a little more money into her campaign now, so that she's free and clear and she gets this focus on the election in November. So that's what we're trying to do. Again, if people, you're going to point the other way. It's so counterintuitive. That's the link. So we really encourage you to help Jasmine out. We got to know Jasmine during the Truth and Democracy rally, and we just are big fans. She's genuine, knowledgeable, passionate, and she's a freedom fighter. So we're all in. We're all in. Michael, do you want to say anything else, or anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I got another question, but I wanted to say that, I mean, here Jasmine is, 5, 6 days, 7 days, something like that, from this primary, which is going to be important to the United States. You take a look at, what we're seeing here, and she's made the time to talk to us here in Florida because she knows, as she said, earlier, that DeSantis and Abbott, are like 2 peas in a sour pod. So I just am moved that you would make the time for us, Jasmine. Of course, we worked, hard to make something happen, and I hope that it's enough. But it's really great what you've done. I have another question. And so, Jasmine, at one point you mentioned Twitter, and people have very diverse and strong feelings about social media. In fact, you can have strong and diverse feelings in and of yourself as an individual. And I'm wondering, as someone who is very much a citizen of the cyber world and is a user, I presume, of social media, what's your view of the positives of social media? What's your view of the negatives, and and do you have any thoughts about all of the ambitions that have been expressed about breaking up Facebook, Google, Apple, the big tech companies?
Yeah, so Lord have mercy. Social media is one of those things that I feel like it's moving just as fast as COVID is when you're trying to keep up with the variants. There's a new one that pops up every daggone day. And, you know, I definitely think that different mediums serve different purposes. A lot of what I do on Twitter, I know that all of the media really follows my Twitter. So randomly, I'll have a tweet on MSNBC. And so it's very good for communicating out with a lot larger and typically a more politically inclined group of folk on Twitter. But I'm on TikTok as well. And TikTok is its own can of worms. You know, I think we need to get a burner phone to put the app on the TikTok just because we have some significant concerns around security, and I may not be able to even have TikTok once I go into Congress because it is not necessarily the safest app to have on your phone. And so, you know, while everybody loves it and it's fun, it is quite dangerous. So you've got TikTok, but that gets to my younger crowd. And really, I'm able to communicate with them in about 20-30 seconds, something that's really powerful. I think our last TikTok had about 700,000 views, and it was about this whole paper fiasco and voter suppression in the state of Texas. And then you've got Facebook and Instagram, and Facebook is nothing like it was when I was in college, when I signed up for it. It is nothing like it is, and I'm not really the biggest fan of how it is now. But I will not necessarily dig in on a side right now as it relates to any specific corporation that's involved in social media, because I also understand that they are private corporations, and I also understand that I have not been given access to all of the information that, say, a congressional member has. And it's one of those things that I'm really going to research and think very long and hard about, and not just jump on the kind of social media bandwagon of we hate it and it needs to be broken up, or we love it, right? I don't want to do that. I really want to be able to articulate the problems and see if there are any, because nothing's perfect, so there's problems. So I'm going to presume that. But I want to see if there's any way that we can come to a happy medium on any of these issues. That's what I do. I'm a problem solver. And so I want to dig in a little bit, and I don't really want to jump into kind of one side or the other on that fight right now.
Yeah, we have time for one last question that came from Facebook, and the woman asks, how do we tackle women's reproductive rights?
We need to be like Nike and just do it. I mean, you know, the fact that we're debating this. In fact, what's interesting is that Sarah, who actually was the attorney that was integral in Roe v. Wade, came into the Texas House with Ada Bernice Johnson. They entered the House 50 years ago, and she had been to the Supreme Court before she actually got sworn in. So the idea that we're going back, I mean, I wasn't born 50 years ago. The idea that we're going back and we're saying, nope, think we got that one wrong after half a daggone century? Like that, I mean, what are we doing? Right? Like, this is crazy. So I think that we just have to get the legislation passed. It seems like, you know, honestly, what I'm hoping everybody does is that we all understand the importance of digging in the fall. We got to get the U.S. Senate together. I mean, we just have to. The U.S. Senate has to get at least 50 Democrats that will do what's right on our very basics. I mean, goodness gracious. The Republicans will stand on the side of wrong for anything. And we can't stand, you know, united as 50 on the side of right? And so I think we do have an opportunity to do some picking up. We've got to make sure that we don't lose right now. So we've got to not lose, and we've got to pick up, because really we need to have 52 so that 2 can continue to hurt us, right? So like neither one of them are up for re-election. Imagine that. So we've got to get, I think Mandela Barnes has an opportunity in Wisconsin. So we need to pick that up, but we can't lose Warnock in the middle of this. And we know that we only got him over the hump by the skin of our teeth, but we're going to have to all invest and fight in Georgia and whoever ends up being the nominee in Wisconsin. And we need to find one more. I don't know what the other one is, but we've all got to invest. I think if we can at least get the numbers in the Senate, while we may lose the House this time, we probably will because of redistricting. I think we'll be in a really good place to actually start moving some legislation. I really do. I think, you know, we can probably find enough common ground to get at least one or two Republicans on our side for voting rights and things like that. You know, but we've got to get some things moving. You know, obviously repro rights came out of the House. Where is it sitting? In the U.S. Senate, just sitting there. You know, all of our problems starting in at the U.S. Senate, it seems like. So we've got to all work together as a country. Like whatever those new Democratic senators, wherever they come from, they're going to be our senators. like it's not coming from Texas, but wherever they're coming from, they're going to be the whole country senators. Because that's what we need right now is 2 senators to kind of balance out how we're losing now.
Yeah, we were just at a fundraiser for Val Demings, who would be a wonderful senator.
Oh, we love
Absolutely.
that.
Yet another possible pickup right there. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Pennsylvania,
she's got a chance. Yeah.
Pennsylvania, a lot of possibilities. Well, okay, well, so we're at the end of the hour that you were so generous in allocating to us. We are so moved by what you've had to say. Your fight is our fight. Your flame lights our flame, keeps our flame going. That's how my hair got to be so white. It's got too much flame going on in there, man. So we love you. Casey, you got anything you want to say and wrap up?
I just want to say that when you are in Congress, we will feel that you're our congressperson also,
Absolutely.
Even though you might be, hailing from a neighboring state. So we want to thank you. We want to thank Jacob and Carol for helping to set this up. You're part of your team. We've had wonderful interactions with your whole team. They're wonderful. So
oh, the man froze right at the end there. So I think we made our point, and
we can.
Yeah. Stay safe. Get in out of the cold.
And we don't want to keep you from your shopping any longer.
Yeah.
Yes, I've arrived. I've got to do my shopping before the storm gets here. But thank you so much. I really do appreciate y'all. And I look forward to, representing you as well in Congress. And I want you to always feel like you can reach out to me. I know things get wacky in the state of California, but I'm definitely okay with being adopted by y'all. And I'll always be here. So thank you again for your generosity and your time this evening.
You're very welcome. You get even wackier in Florida.
The link will stay open, folks. So if you want to donate even after the event, please do. So thank you so much. Thank you to the team and folks who tuned in and everybody. It's really, really good and important work that we're doing to help. So let's all keep pitching in. Thank you so much, folks. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Really appreciate you guys doing this.
Thank you, Jacob.
Jacob.